Hello there. Today I'm looking at an incredibly rare wine. In fact, a bit of a wine unicorn. This is a wine made from a grape variety that the Wine Searcher website only has one single varietal example of, and that's this one. This is from Central Otago in New Zealand's South Island, and this is Rippon's Osteiner, and this is from the 2018 vintage. So Osteiner is a grape variety that's a crossing. It's a crossing of Riesling and Silvaner. So in that way it has the same parentage as, say, Otago. It was created at the German Wine Institute at Geisenheim in 1928. But actually it wasn't until 1984 that it was officially recognised by the authorities as a grape variety. Today, there are a few vineyards with Osteiner left in them in Germany, and those can be found in the Rheingau, in the Pfalz, and in Franken. But there are perhaps only 2 hectares in total of this grape variety being grown, and one of those hectares is planted at Rippon, which probably makes them the most significant producer of Osteiner anywhere in the world, and certainly, as I say, this is the only single varietal example of Osteiner that I'm aware of, so I'm assuming the rest of the production ends up in blends. So Rippon, a New Zealand producer based in the Wanaka sub-region of Central Otago, in fact probably one of the most spectacular vineyards anywhere in the world, with views looking out over Lake Wanaka towards the Southern Alps in the background. The winery is owned by the Mills family, with Nick Mills, who's a 4th generation member of the family, and his wife Jo currently running the winery. They have about 15 hectares of vines, and they're probably best known for their Pinot Noirs. They also make a gamay, and then for whites they concentrate on Riesling and Gewürztraminer, but also have a little bit of Sauvignon Blanc and of course Osteiner. Now, although Nick is the 4th generation of his family to farm this site, it was his father who actually turned the farm into a vineyard, sort of starting planting vines here in 1975. Nick describes his father as having fought in the Second World War in the Navy, and on his trip back to New Zealand, having visited Portugal and seen the sort of the schistous soils in the Douro Valley, seeing some real similarities to the sort of soils here on their farm in Wanaka. Having spotted this resemblance, Nick sort of said that really his father just went around and collected as many different grape varieties as he could find, and in fact ended up planting somewhere in the region of 25 varieties in total to find out what worked here, and eventually settling on the 6 that I've already listed. Now, the Osteiner appears to have been a later introduction, having been imported in the 1990s, but with the first plantings in the 1970s, this was one of the first vineyards established in Central Otago. And one of the things that means is when Nick and Jo took over running the estate in 2003, the vines were already 30 years old. Many of them were on their own roots. They were completely dry farmed, and all the farming here had gone on completely organically. No pesticides were used here, no herbicides, and no chemical fertilizers. The next step for Nick was to convert the practices here in the vineyard to biodynamics. So the vineyards here are on sloping hillsides of decomposed schist soil, comprising some clays, some gravels, and some loess soils. These are mineral-rich soils with inorganic substrate. The topsoils are shallow, and the vines have to work their way down really quite deep and explore to find reserves of water amongst the shallow, glacial and alluvial topsoils here. The vineyard's position next to Lake Wanaka, a significant body of water, moderates the climate. Typically, Central Otago has a fairly continental climate, so the proximity of the lake helps moderate the excesses of summer heat, but also helps protect the vines from frost during the middle of the winter. Consequently, also, though, there's less diurnal variation, so the difference between daytime and nighttime temperatures isn't as great as in some other parts of Central Otago. And Nick believes that enables them to ripen their grapes with slightly lower potential alcohol levels. All that having been said, actually the Osteiner thrives well on a site that's slightly further away from the lake, on slightly deeper soils. And the vines here are on their own roots, and in 2018 they would have been 25 years old. So they're fully mature vines that should be giving lovely low yields. Now, I don't know a lot about the winemaking here. My assumption is that it's done in temperature controlled stainless steel tanks to maintain as much of the freshness and the aromatics of the variety as possible. Fermentation is done using the ambient yeasts that have found their way into the winery on the fruit, and certainly there's no oak aging. So this is a wine that's produced in a quite straightforward way in order to optimize its fruit. And in honesty, the wines from 2018, I may find that it's not a wine that was suited to aging, and I probably should have drunk this up a couple of years ago. So let's have a look at it, shall we? Looking at the colour, there's a lovely medium yellow, almost with a sort of a slight greenish hint. I'm swirling it, and it actually seems to be providing some tears on the side of the glass, very slowly, but they are there. And that's a little bit of a surprise, actually, because the alcohol level on this is simply listed as 11.5% on the label. So let's see what we make of the aromas, shall we? The aromas have a lovely focus, they're very pure. There's a mineral nature, but actually maybe that's where the aging's come in. Almost like an aged Riesling. There is a slight petrol-y note on the nose. Looking behind that, you've got more sort of limey notes, lime flower notes. Certainly there are no notes of oak. I'm not seeing notes of extended lees aging. But also there's a slight mineral struck match note, perhaps not something you'd normally want too close to petrol-y aromas. So let's have a taste. Wow, the wine has a wonderful pungency. There really is quite a tartness there. Those notes of petrol are still there, but you see past that mineral freshness really is sort of peaking up some limey notes that are coming through there. Lime, grapefruit. There's a really fresh intensity of citrus fruit there. And while the wine's age is probably given those developed petrol-y notes, there is still a wonderful intensity of that beautiful, pungent, citric fruit, really giving a lovely long finish. The wine's not hugely complex, it's not particularly weighty, it's light to medium bodied at best. The alcohol at 11% is sitting there beautifully in balance with the fruit, and I probably should have said at the outset the wine's totally bone dry. So there is that sort of crisp, sort of almost rapier-like acidity at the back there, giving some lovely long length and helping to prolong the intensity of what is really excellent fruit. So thank you for joining me. I do hope you found this of interest. I think it's unusual to taste an Osteiner. Do please let me know in the notes below if you've come across other Osteiners. I'd be really interested by that. If you've enjoyed the video, do please give us a like, that would be fantastic. If you'd like to watch more of these videos, perhaps you could sign up and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and that way also you can set yourself an alert and you can be notified every time I publish a new tasting. If you've got friends you think might like to watch it, feel free to pass it on to them. I'd really appreciate that as well. And if you have any comments you want to leave, please pop them in the comments box below. I'd love to hear what you think about the wines I'm trying, the tastings I'm doing, or anything else that relates to that. So thank you again for joining us, and I do hope you'll make some time. Come and join me for another tasting in the very near future. Till then, bye for now.